Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. Thank you so much for joining me. The title of today's podcast, No Savings, No Problem. We're asking the question. Of course, we know that no savings equates to a huge problem, but we're going to focus on a survey that was conducted back in September, and the article was published in September. And yes, it is several months old, but I like the fact that it's a few months old because that's in the heart of COVID-19, the restrictions, the lockdowns, and Nobody Cares Act 1.0 had been passed, and a lot of that liquidity, a lot of that spending was already making its way through the system. So I think this is at least going to be a good benchmark for us to sort of note this podcast, No Savings, No Problem, for a September survey that, of course, focuses on savings accounts, the mean, so the average and the median, so we're going to get both of those numbers, as well as some retirement statistics. So this will be a good benchmark, so when we go forward and more data comes out later this year, we can see how that related to this survey last September. Get to some market performance, and then yesterday we sort of signed off with just a brief mention of today's events that unfolded in Washington, D.C. with respect to President Donald J. Trump's second impeachment trial, or at least this was sort of the pre-trial hearing, if you will, that took place to sort of determine if it is constitutional to have a hearing for somebody who is no longer the President of the United States. So obviously both sides made their argument. You had the Democratic House impeachment managers state their case, and then you had the defense team for Donald Trump state their case, and then it was put to a full vote of the Senate. The Senate voted. I believe the vote, off the top of my head, was 56-44, obviously maintaining that the trial is constitutional, so the real trial will begin tomorrow. How long it lasts is anybody's guess, but it's supposed to be relatively brief. Whether there will be witnesses or not remains outstanding. I mean, the senators, for all intents and purposes, were witnesses to the fact of what occurred on January 6th with the breaching of the U.S. Capitol building. Now, the performance today by the president's defense team was atrocious. The first lawyer up to bat, Bruce Castor Jr., I believe his name was, he started off sort of talking very highly about the Senate as an institution, some of its history, and then also talking very highly of the senators themselves. I mean, it was just a flatter campaign. Just make everybody happy. Just kiss their butts. And I think even a lot of those senators said, boy, this guy's going over the top with this stuff. I mean, yeah, we're not that good. And of course they're not. Some of these people are the scum of the earth, unfortunately. But that was basically his entire presentation. I figured, okay, he wants to be nice, try to get everybody to his side. Okay, a couple minutes of this. But he just kept droning on and on and on about how great the Senate is as an institution and all these senators. And I guess he's from Pennsylvania, so Senators Pat Toomey and Senator Bob Casey, which also happen to be my senators. These guys are great. I talk to them, call them on the phone, blah, 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 blah. No real defense of Donald Trump whatsoever. Even making the claim that, you can't do this. So he's obviously making the case that it's unconstitutional. But, if you want to bring criminal charges, I mean, that's really what should happen because he's no longer in office. So if some district prosecutor wants to bring up charges, that's, I guess, the remedy that should take place. And that could still happen. I mean, I'm not an attorney. I don't know the statute of limitations on that, but that could happen. Donald Trump still has issues with a couple of prosecutors up in New York. He might have some problems down south in Georgia, per his phone call with the Secretary of State of Georgia, where he was asking for just one more vote than what Joe Biden received. What was the number? 11,800 or something like that. I just need one more vote, buddy. Just give me one more vote so I can beat Joe Biden. Even though in the same sentence he says he won the state. So that's what you're dealing with here, okay? That could be another issue unto itself. That might get thrown into this into this argument too. I don't know. All I know is the circus continues. All I know is this is constitutional because there has to be some form of recourse. There has to be some type of remedy. The articles of impeachment went through while Donald Trump was still the president of the United States. I'm big on recourse. I'm big on remedy. You can't simply say, well, hey, I'm in the middle of this impeachment trial. Well, I'll resign. And then that just stops everything. Because, well, I'm no longer in office, so you can't do anything about it. Or I only have a couple days left in my term as president, or any office for that matter. I'm going to do whatever I want. Something that everybody and their mother could agree is an impeachable offense. But I'm going to be able to get away with it because I'm no longer going to be in office just a few short days from now. That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I understand there's another argument, not articulated very well or at all by President Trump's defense team today. Maybe they'll get their act together later this week. I don't know. I understand there's another argument out there that says, yes, this is not constitutional, it's unconstitutional, but I'm not buying it because there has to be a remedy. There is not a loophole. Our founding fathers would not have allowed such a loophole to exist. Obviously, you can disagree. You can think that this is unconstitutional. That's perfectly fine. You're allowed to disagree. And furthermore, you can think that this is just kabuki theater. This is crazy town again, that the president, Donald Trump, should not have been impeached at all. But then I simply have to ask you, well, what should be the recourse? What should be the remedy to his actions and to his rhetoric? Because people died. A young woman got shot in the neck and is dead. Okay, would she have been in the U.S. Capitol on January 6th if President Trump didn't say, hey, everybody, it's going to be a wild time. Come down to the Capitol on January 6th. Come down. I mean, stop the steal. Hashtag stop the steal. You're not going to have a country anymore. The Democrats are going to ruin this country. They're going to destroy it. They stole the election from us. Fight, fight, fight. Would that woman still be alive? What about the other people who died because of health conditions, probably suffered a heart attack because of the anxiety and all of the excitement? Couldn't handle it. The police officers that are dead. The Capitol Police and a number of other people who were injured. This is forever going to be a stain on our history. This wasn't just about January 6th in the speech that Donald Trump gave that day. This was virtually months in the making. This is, hey, match, meet black powder. What do you think is going to happen? For months prior to the election, we had Donald Trump saying if he wins, all right, all's well within the universe. Everything's okay. But if I lose, it's rigged. Now, I simply have to ask my conservative Republican friends out there, if Barack Obama made such a statement, would you be okay with it? I guarantee you wouldn't be, and you would be right to not be okay with it. Do you think Fox News would just have, Barack Obama said if I win, everything's okay. If I lose, it's rigged. It's rigged against me. You think Sean Hannity would be done talking about that? Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, Laura Ingraham? No, they'd be talking about it all day long. And they'd be right to bring that point up because that's extremely dangerous rhetoric. It's disqualifying as far as I'm concerned, and I said that several months ago after he uttered those words. And I don't say this because I don't like Donald Trump. I don't care for him, but that's not why I said it. I said it because he's not the first person in history to say such a thing. And if you understand the people who say such things, you don't want them anywhere near corridors of power. You don't want them in positions of authority, especially not the President of the United States. But people don't care about that. They don't care about history. They don't care about any of that crap. Just like we see in financial markets, I discuss that every day. People have no respect for history, and so we're doomed to repeat it. I'm talking to the wall. I understand it, but I'm going to keep doing it. Same thing. So he gets all these people worked up. Lo and behold, he loses. Well, it must be rigged. I got to keep on keeping on here. This was my story. I have to stick to it. I got to send Rudy Giuliani all over God's creation to pick up stories, kick up dust. Go to one judge after the next. Go after one state legislature after the next. One secretary of state after the next. Many of which were Republicans. No, the vote's holding up. The vote stands. Joe Biden's the winner. Well, it's still rigged. Well, the last thing we can do is everybody Why don't you come down to the Capitol building, Washington, D.C. on January 6th? Why January 6th? Because that's the day where Congress convenes to count the votes, the Electoral College to certify the votes, the results. This is your last stand. Remember the Alamo. What do you think is going to happen? Did Donald Trump go out on that speech or on Twitter and say, ransack the Capitol, break into it? No, he's not that stupid. He's been in enough legal trouble throughout his entire life to know a little bit about cover your rear end. Oh, be peaceful here, but then fight, blah, 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 blah. What Don Jr. said that day, what Rudy Giuliani said that day. Again, match, meet black powder. What do you think is going to happen? He has these people convinced that there is not going to be a country, that the Democrats are going to destroy the country. This is your last chance. Fight, fight, fight. And to say that he cannot be held accountable, then who can be? I mean, clearly the individuals too have to be held to account. I'm not dismissing their actions. Them being picked up by the police, the FBI, that's the right course of action. This should not have happened. And believe me, you're not going to find a bigger proponent of putting people in Congress on notice. It's not just the Democrats who are destroying this country, it's the Republicans too. But you have 1,000,001 legitimate reasons to put them on notice, to send them notes, send them emails, walk into their offices, make as many phone calls as you can, march on Washington, D.C., and put them on notice. 1,000,001 legitimate reasons. Probably more than that. They give us new crap every single day to use against them. But this only caused further division because this was so political. And it was focused on such a concentrated portion within the Republican Party. And of course, as I stated, the vote to determine that this was constitutional by the Senate, 56 to 44, means that you had 6 Republicans cross the line, if you will. We knew that there was going to be 5. But then there was another crossover, if you will, in Senator Cassidy down in Louisiana, simply because he said that the argument outlined by the House managers was just so much better than that of President Trump's defense team, which is true. So we don't know the backstory. It could just be that simple, or it could be some sort of, backroom deal to start getting one by one. They get the crossover because you need a 2/3 majority to convict on impeachment. So there's still going to have to be another dozen or so Republicans that cross the line, if you will, to convict Donald Trump on these charges. That's still not likely, but one guy breaking on the first day, moving over, well, maybe that gives cover to some more. Because the Republicans do not want to touch this. They don't want to talk about it. They just don't want to talk about it because it puts them in a no-win situation because they're spineless cowards at this juncture. This is just more proof positive to me that the party is crumbling, which is perfectly fine with me because now we only have one party left to deal with. Perfectly fine. I'm tired of the 2-party system. Let's get rid of them. Get rid of one, we got one more to go. And believe me, they'll destroy themselves as they maintain power over the next couple of years too. If there's something the Democrats can do, it's screw up royally, and we're going to witness that. We're already seeing it as it is. But the Republicans want no part of this, most of them. This is the chance to sort of put Donald Trump down, put this to rest, but they're just so afraid of him. And one of the arguments put forth today by Trump's defense team is that the Democrats are concerned. They're afraid of Donald Trump running against them in 2024. The Democrats just won. They got the White House, they got the Senate, they got the House. Biden's in the White House. Kamala's next to him. God help us. Nancy Pelosi's still the speaker. Chuck Schumer's now the leader of the Senate. Oh yeah, they are deathly afraid of Donald Trump. They just beat him. It's the Republican Party that is afraid of Donald Trump. They have no spine. They hitched their wagon to him. Now they have to deal with what they have sown. And it's a disaster. It's a disaster. I think you can probably tell where I come down on this. I mean, I don't want Donald Trump anywhere near politics anymore. He was not a solution. I mean, even if you want to give me, okay, well, you don't like his style, that's fine, but he did so much good for the country. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. We've been over this 1,000,001 times too. No, he didn't. There was no drainage of the swamp. We got $1 trillion deficits before COVID-19. We got further wealth income inequality. So you got a little bit of a wall down on the southern border. You passed a little thing with Keystone Pipeline. Yeah, really makes a big difference. I mean, I just don't know what to tell you. One data point after the next. The entirety of 2019's podcasts saying that this is not the greatest economy ever. This was a continuation of trend. Simply look at a graph. I give you the graphs. I give you the sources. I do the presentations in capital economics. Look them up. Donald Trump didn't come to town and change the trajectory, making everything better. It was a continuation of trend. In what was the longest bull market, which we are still witnessing with respect to the stock market, and it was the longest expansion of the business cycle. It was also the weakest, but it was the longest. So it's just a continuation of trend. There was no miraculous Trump bump or anything else like that. He's just a master salesman, a master marketer, and takes credit for anything that looks good. And says it every single day, multiple times a day, drills it into you. I want him gone. I don't want his family anywhere near politics, but they probably will be. I just wish some Republicans would step up to the plate and really just knock him out. Just say, because he didn't solve any problems. He's not responsible for all of this. Far from it. But he didn't make it better. And there was definitely some more division with him at the helm. That's got to stop. Some market performance, and then we'll get to our article with respect to savings. Dollar index continuing to get hit. 90.404, 90.404. Dollar getting hit across the major average or against the major currency pairs. The euro is back at $1.21. British pound at $1.38. Remember, we were flirting with $1.36, $1.37 handle. Again, $1.38 now with respect to the British pound. The Australian dollar is again at a 77 handle. New Zealand Kiwi at 72 handle, etc., etc. So we continue to see some dollar weakness across the board. Bitcoin at $45,900 a coin. Mixed bag across pretty much across the board today on Wall Street, but overnight futures trading the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up about 0.3%. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100 are both up about 0.4%. Flat on the cash trade in Japan. Mixed bag across the pond in Europe, the biggest loser being that of the Spanish markets, giving back 1.4%. Australian cash trade is up about 0.5%, as is Chinese stocks gaining 1% for the day. Just to take a quick look at Tesla because of the news that we announced yesterday with respect to a bubble buying a bubble. That being Tesla purchasing $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. While Bitcoin shot to the moon, Tesla is once again down 1.6%, trading at $850. On the commodity front, WTI is holding its own at $58.20 a barrel. Brent is at $60.99 a barrel, so still flirting with that 61 handle. Natural gas at $2.79. Gold and silver relatively flat, but maintaining their own. Gold at $1,843 an ounce. Silver $27.35 an ounce. I'm going to have to do a podcast, probably several of them, and maybe even a video on commodities because these prices keep going up. I am a long-term bull with respect to precious metals and commodities. I've been on that bandwagon here for a while. That's my analysis. It's the inflation. That liquidity is going to make its way somewhere. We're already witnessing it. So buckle up and strap in because it's not going to get pretty. And to round it out, Uncle Sam's 10-year junk note is yielding 1.16. So still flirting where we were earlier this week and last week. So that's cause for concern on a number of fronts of which we discussed. Proof positive as far as I'm concerned that the Federal Reserve is trapped. We talked about this back in 2019. These things take time. When you have a printing press, you can buy yourself some precious time, and that's what they continue to do, kicking the can down the road, stretching it out. They don't want the music to stop on their watch, and just putting more and more responsibility, more and more of these costs and liabilities and debts on the backs of younger people and generations yet to be. Okay, so that's the situation in which we find ourselves. That's the leadership. Again, 1,000,001 reasons to put these people on notice. But no, let's all talk about conspiracy theories and poo-poo the fact that the guy that you wanted to win didn't. Here we go. Study. Average American savings account balance is $3,500. Again, this was back in September. The Federal Reserve reports that 39% of Americans do not have enough money on hand to cover a $400 emergency. Again, 39% of Americans do not have enough money on hand to cover a $400 emergency. And this is supposed to be the wealthiest, most successful country on the planet. Every adult should have enough money in savings to cover a minimum of 3 months of essential living expenses. Ideally, everyone should have 6 months' worth. That means some people still have some work to do, to put it mildly. So this survey they conducted with 2,000 Americans. These are some of their key findings. These are the bullet points. 71% of Americans have a savings account. 22% have $1,000 to $5,000 in savings. 56% of Americans have $5,000 or less in savings, while a third have $1,000 or less. The median savings amount is $3,500, while the mean or the average is $26,619, with obviously the mean being the 50th percentile, so 50% of the population is above that figure. Here it's $3,500, and 50% of the population is below $3,500. The median emergency fund is $2,000, while the average is $39,900. 3 out of 4 people keep at least some of their savings at a brick-and-mortar bank. 55% of people with a savings account have more than one. About half of respondents said that they have an account specifically for emergencies. The median withdrawal due to COVID-19 is $1,000, while the average is $3,139. And then 3 out of 4 respondents automate their savings deposits. Now, I'm not going to go through the entirety of this article. I can hot link it at thecapitalnews.com if you're interested in finding it. Some of the information I'm just not overly concerned with, but it's still a good article nonetheless. So here we have, again, the median savings account balance in the U.S. is $3,500. 71% of Americans have a savings account. All right. So we asked our respondents how much they had in savings, and the median value was $3,500. The mean or the average savings balance, however, is $26,619. So that puts us relatively close to where the USDebtClock.org puts us as well. So, I mean, it's hard to obviously pinpoint all of this. It's a big country. There's a lot of money sloshing around. But time and time again, all of these surveys from various reputable firms come up with pretty much the same figure. So that's good to know. So that's some charts that pretty much just telling us the same stuff. The median emergency fund balance, so again, there's a differentiation, is $2,000. We asked people about their emergency funds as well as their general savings accounts. Not everyone keeps a separate account separately for emergencies, though we'll talk about that in a bit. Among people who do keep a separate account, though, the median emergency fund balance is $2,000, and the average emergency fund balance is $39,900. It's probably just a behavioral thing that people say, okay, it's an emergency, so it sort of triggers them to put more into an emergency fund as opposed to just a simple savings account. So there's a little bit of a behavioral analysis to that figure. Back to savings here. Unfortunately, 56% of Americans have $5,000 or less in savings. Again, 56% of Americans have $5,000 or less in savings, and a third have $1,000 or less. And then it notes here, when the average American's monthly expenses are $5,100, that's not enough to cover an emergency. I mean, they don't have $400. So how are they going to cover 1 month's expense at $5,100? Now, that's the average. It'd be interesting to know what the median, obviously, monthly expenses are. I'm sure it's relatively close. I mean, you just figure in your rent or your mortgage, your car payment, any other type of insurance, your food, your phone, internet, cable, any other subscriptions that you have. Try to have a social life, all your car expenses, everything. $5,100 is probably not too far-fetched, although it seems to be obviously on the high side because that takes you to about $60,000 for the entire year, and we know what people's wages are, but nonetheless, we know what type of debt they're in too. So it'd be interesting to know, again, what the median figure is on those monthly expenses. But nonetheless, it's still too high, and people just, they can't save money. Now, some of that, of course, is on them. That's behavioral. They're not good with managing money, but a lot is just the cost of living is too high, and people, it's very difficult to make ends meet. The article continues with some of the breakdown between brick and mortar banks versus online lending and savings accounts. I'm not too concerned with that. People obviously are automating their savings. That's a good thing. And then we move on to Americans have withdrawn thousands because of COVID-19. So that's where it gets a little bit interesting. So many people have grappled with income loss during the COVID-19 crisis and have tapped their savings accounts because of it. Now, the interesting thing, this is just a side note, typically when we enter a period of recession, and of course this is the Greatest Depression, but nonetheless, when we enter a period of recession, incomes typically fall off. I mean, that just makes intuitive sense. But what we've witnessed here, because of Nobody Cares Act 1.0, 2.0, et cetera, incomes have actually gone up. Okay, there hasn't been any type of production that warrants this. That's the inflation. That's why this is going to be extremely costly and expensive. Yeah, it might give you a good morphine or sugar high now, but you're going to come crashing down, pal, and it's just a matter of time till we all witness that. So I just want you to understand that. Yes, typically there would be some significant income loss, but because of all of the money printing that we've thrown into the system, incomes actually went up. So in our survey, the median amount withdrawn from savings was $1,000, but the average withdrawal was slightly above $3,100. Let's see here. Given that the median emergency fund contains $2,000, this means many people had to deplete half of their emergency savings to cover expenses during the pandemic. Here are some additional savings statistics. One thing to keep in mind is that the above numbers represent average savings account balances based on our survey. Again, a survey of 2,000 participants. We recognize that our sample set offers a limited snapshot of how people are saving, so we compiled some additional data. Americans have a cumulative $11.7 trillion in savings, according to the Federal Reserve. When we divide that number by 209 million U.S. adults and assume that 71% have a savings account as per our findings above, we get an average savings account balance of $39,710. Now, that's well above their average from the above for the savings account figure, but it is in alignment with the emergency fund figure at $39,000. A Trans-America Center for Retirement Studies found that Americans have a median of $5,000 in emergency savings. But median emergency savings increase with age. $3,000 for millennials, $5,000 for Gen Xers, and $15,000 for baby boomers. In July of 2020, the personal savings rate was at 17.8%, meaning that Americans were saving that percentage of their income, but this doesn't distinguish between their general savings and other types of savings like retirement. And we'll mention retirement here in a second. 40% of households have at least 3 months of living expenses saved, so that's decent, and 28% have at least 6 months of living expenses saved. That's decent. Now on to some retirement. So almost half of American families have no retirement savings. That is not good at all. So far, we focused on near-term savings, money to tap in a pinch, but what about long-term retirement savings? Just 54% of families headed by workers aged 32 to 61 participate in any kind of retirement plan, which means nearly half of families have no retirement savings at all, according to the Economic Policy Institute. Meanwhile, the estimated median retirement savings across all generations is $50,000. $50,000. If you have average savings or average monthly expenses of $5,000, you're not even getting through a full year with $50,000. This figure increases with age, $23,000 for millennials, $64,000 for Gen Xers, and $144,000 for baby boomers, according to the Trans-America Center for Retirement Studies. And of course, that stands to reason. The younger you are, the less time you've had for your wages to go up, for compounding interest to work with you, et cetera, et cetera. So that makes intuitive sense across the age demographics there. But these numbers they're pretty bad. They're pretty sad. They're pretty heartbreaking. And unfortunately, they're getting worse. I mean, yeah, we can print money, we can put it in people's pockets, but then, okay, that's going to have an effect. This isn't free. And that takes me back to the point of inflation. That's what all of this is. Your food prices are going to go through the roof. I mean, we might be able to dodge some of the bullet here in the United States because we are the breadbasket of the world. There's so much food here, thank God, and other reasons. But we're going to see probably a ton of revolutions and protests and coups, you name it, around the globe. Revolutions are fought on empty stomachs. We've already been told from last year, from the United Nations, other groups, that there is likely going to be a famine this year. Okay, so this is far from over. When you take into account the economic growth or lack thereof, when you couple that with the demographics of various countries, if you have a very young demographic, a very young country, and you have food prices going through the roof, and you have a weak economy, generally speaking, that's a recipe for disaster. That's match meet black powder. And none of this is being priced into the markets at all. It's just swimmingly well. There are no problems on the horizon whatsoever. Printing all this money has no costs. Everything just keeps going up. Nobody has savings. Half the country has no retirement. Yet keep cheerleading the stock market. Keep cheerleading these bubbles one after the next. A couple of interesting interviews. I know I'm running a little bit late here, but just a couple interesting interviews I came across, and I'm sure many of you have perhaps seen these if you were watching CNBC, Bloomberg, and some of these other stations where they talk about this. But you have Stanley Druckenmiller, a legendary hedge fund manager, 40, 50 years of experience under his belt, saying these are the craziest markets he's ever witnessed. He was and I have to give him a lot of credit, he was somebody who was criticizing quantitative easing, saying it was the largest wealth transfer in the history of the world, which rightly so. Rightly so. That was back during the great financial crisis. They're doing that on steroids now, so it's an even bigger problem, and that's why we're witnessing this huge gap in income and wealth inequality. It's just stirring the pot, economically, socially, and politically. And then you have billionaire real estate mogul and investor and developer Sam Zell. Again, another guy with 40, 50 years of experience under his belt, saying these are the craziest markets he's ever seen. People don't respect history, they're doomed to repeat it. That's why I'm so concerned about this, because if people just understood what was going on here, they'd be able to prepare. But nobody cares. They just want to ride the train. They're going to ride it up, and guess what? They're going to ride it over the cliff, too. It's what happened 1920s. It's what happened 1970s, 1980s. It's what happened in the dot-com boom and bust. Happened in the real estate boom and bust, great financial crisis. It's going to happen again. But I guess we have to learn the hard way. No savings, no problem? You tell me. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.